like to do is we tend to debate these things, right? So the metric I would like to propose here is how many leaps of faith does it take to get from atheism or no beliefs to whatever your belief is, right?
One, as long as it's a really,
big one, right? So the point of the show today is to break down all this really sort of big leap of faith to Christianity or deism or some of these other beliefs, and look at how many leaps you really have to make in order to get there. This idea of leap of faith was attributed to Soren Kierkegaard, and it can be defined as a belief in something without evidence or in spite of evidence to the contrary. So a leap is really sort of a guess, right? You're sort of believing something that you don't have any evidence for. The likelihood of it being correct, because it's a guess, it would be very small, right? And when you start making multiple leaps, the likelihood gets multiplied, right? This very small number gets multiplied by a very small number. It becomes an even smaller number, right? So the more leaps of faith that you make, the less likely the thing is to be true. And I count 30 leaps of faith from atheism to Christianity. So the likelihood of it being true is, all things being equal, is basically nothing, right, as far as I'm concerned, right? So even if we accept the one leap of faith that is that God exists, it's still very, very unlikely that Christianity exists. So it's like
that's a huge leap from the get-go.
Right.
I mean, you're
yeah.
going to kind of go through your list of them.
We're going to go through the list.
But the very first one is the one you just mentioned,
right.
that some God exists.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say, just from the outset, that particular leap is at least as fanciful as most of the other ones combined. Because, for many reasons. What is your justification, or what is the, I guess, rationalization? What path is it that you would have to take in order to kind of back up your leap of faith? I mean, I realize that faith, you don't need any backing for it, and that's its, I guess, one saving grace is you don't have to explain why you're believing nonsense. But as far as how big of a leap it is,
sure, and
usually there's some excuse.
Yeah, so the existence of a God is certainly one thing. I mean, when you start talking about God with an atheist, that's probably the first thing that the atheist is going to bring up, right? Because it's sort of the first step in doing this, right? And we're not even convinced that that's even a very sound jump, right? And we bring this topic up all the time, right? In the absence of evidence for something, you're more conservative. The more conservative thing is to not believe it, not buy into it, right? Not believe the Nigerian scam that came in your email, right? Because you don't have any evidence that it's true. These sorts of things. It's best to be conservative. So this is where we get off the train of these beliefs. So these 30 guesses that I claim, it may be more than 30. I mean, you probably can think of a few more that need to be made here. These 30 leaps of faith are like making 30 wild guesses in a row and arriving at the truth. It's like winning a lottery that has 30 balls, right? It's like, anyway. So we've already talked about the first one, is there exists a God. And then the next one I'd like to hit is there exists only one God. And that's sort of a leap of faith, is that we really are talking about monotheism. There's only one God. But many belief systems, like Hinduism and such, have multiple gods. They have multiple pantheons, and I would claim even Christianity does. I mean, by the way, many of the leaps here I'm going to talk about have actually been show topics, right? So Tracy has been on and talked about a lot of the gods that led up to Christianity. There's Elohim, there's El, there's Ashera, there's Sophia. All these are mentioned in the Bible, by the way. In Genesis 6, we have the sons of God interbreeding with humans to become the heroes of old.
Yeah, when you start including the possibility of like demigods or lesser gods, or even within, you've got the Holy Trinity, plus you've got this dualistic approach among some Christians where you have God who's all-powerful, and then Satan or the devil who's damn near all-powerful, but just not quite enough to beat the other guy.
Right.
So you have a multiple God system there.
It's a pantheon.
One of the problems that we've talked about before is that, okay, we're going to go ahead and grant, for the sake of argument, this first huge leap of faith that some God exists, and your second one is that only one God exists.
Right.
And one of the reasons why that's a good kind of first step or second step, and also, is because it is implausible, even internally. A polytheistic pantheon of gods makes more sense from a practical standpoint than one God, which is why when we move from polytheism to monotheism, the traits of these many gods get kind of summed up in the one, and he becomes internally conflicted.
Right. So the multiple gods gives you kind of a convenient out for why things don't work out in real life, right? Yeah. Something screws up. Well, one god was fighting against the other, right? Or you know, it was a tug of war, and one, you know, God A won and God B didn't win, or whatever. Right? You can always have a
They're
rationalization.
trying to sabotage each other, or bickering over territory.
Right. It's more like I like the Greek gods because they're kind of like a soap opera.
Yeah, you got well, if you got a god of war and a god of lust, what if your war is based on lust for somebody? So now they're struggling, and you can explain anything. Oh, this one wanted this, and this one wanted that.
They got new shoes, and they're clomping around up there and making noise. Anyway. Okay. Even in the Bible, we have the notion of molten gods. You know, and this God of the Bible being all afraid of molten gods, which I find very, very funny. Well, you know, why would somebody who's so powerful be so concerned about such a thing? Anyway, leap number 3: God is intelligent. So we presume that the God's pretty smart, right? They're just kind of tied up in this notion of God. I guess a lot of these first ones are kind of pinning down the nature of God. You could have a stupid God, right? Why not? So this is is one of the assumptions behind the ID movement, and so on. So were you going to say?
So you're not saying that your number 3 there, where it says God is intelligent. The fact that God, as you know, we've already granted in the first one. Whatever, that some God exists, and inherent in the definition is some level of intelligence. What you're talking about for number 3 is a sufficient level of intelligence, a wisdom, or
maybe so. Maybe you know,
smarter than us.
Smarter than us. Okay, right. But then you get problems with the Bible, right? Of all the different mistakes that God's made along the way. So, like, you know. Like Adam and Eve falling.
I don't know, having a creation, having it go wrong, starting over, having it go wrong, starting over, having it go wrong.
Starting over.
Yeah.
Confusing
the Bible is an anthology of the failures of Jehovah to get anything at all right.
So we're still kind of in the land here where God could be some sort of